Hello, folks. Welcome to another edition of the Foojay Podcast. Today, we will talk about making Java attractive for beginners in programming. And we have some amazing guests joining us for this.
Welcome to the Foojay Podcast, all your news about OpenJDK.
Java gets some unfair, bad rap these days, even though it's younger than Python and only as old as JavaScript. Well, some of the criticism may be valid. Most of it comes from ignorance of Java's evolution as a language, at least in my opinion. But it does affect adoption, of Java, especially by newcomers in programming, and it also scares away students to an extent because of all this wraparound. So how can we make Java more attractive to students and newcomers? So let's ask our amazing guests.
My name is Elvira van der Ven. I'm a lecturer at University of Applied Science in Rotterdam. Our main track is technical engineering. And that's actually a really good question. How can we make Java more attractive for students? That's the question we are all asking ourselves to teach the students.
My name is Matt Raible. I live in Denver, Colorado. I'm currently a developer advocate for Okta, and I've been doing Java since the late 90s, so quite some time, and I have many opinions on what we can do to make Java easier for new developers.
I'm Frank Delporte. I'm a Java developer, a senior technical writer at Azul. Normally I'm hosting this podcast, but I'm very happy that Deepu, you proposed this topic for the podcast and that you are hosting it. But I'm also doing some Coder Dojo coding clubs for kids where we are not using Java, we're using Scratch and stuff like that. And indeed, that's a really good topic. Why are we not using Java in that club? Why do we think that it's maybe too difficult to get young people interested in this programming language? We should talk about it.
And I'm Deepu K Sasidharan. I'm a polyglot developer and a Java champion. So I work for Okta as well as a developer advocate. And I also co-lead JHipster. I'm an open source aficionado, author, speaker, all the developer advocate stuff. And yeah, as Frank mentioned, I'll be hosting this today. Maybe let's start with this. So in each of your opinion, is Java a good language for beginners? And regardless of what you think, yes or no, please explain why you think that.
So I think it's a good language for beginners if the environment is set up, because what I've seen leading DevOps for kids and doing other programming classes, especially for younger people, and even older people, Deepu and I experienced this at DevOps Belgium this year, is getting the environment set up is the hardest part. Writing the code is actually one of the easier parts. So if you happen to have an operating system that comes with Java, boy, would that be convenient, right? I know that Mac OS comes with like Ruby by default, and it comes with Python maybe as well, which can lead to very difficult problems for developers when they need to upgrade those built-in languages. But I don't know that Java ships with any operating system by default. And so that's the hardest part, right? Is actually getting people to have everything set up. So all they have to do is type, the code and run it.
Well, I have a little bit different opinion about pre-installed, about how hard it is to install Java. We start with C. That's pretty hard to install because you have different compilers, you have different OS systems. That takes around 2 classes to install it at everyone's computer. While Java, if you use a good IDE, you can just install it and start it, and you are ready to go in maybe half an hour with a full class of 30 students. So I guess Java is easy to start with, especially because Java takes care about a lot of things you don't have to.
Yeah, I agree that the installation part can be challenging. I have been doing the Java on Raspberry Pi stuff for some years now. And you have one Raspberry Pi operating system flavor, if you can call it like that, which has Java. And then that's the full option, they call it. But indeed, those were the challenges I had when I started experimenting with Java and JavaFX on the Pi how to get this bloody thing running with Java the first time. Now it's simple. You have SDKman, which is, I think, a wonderful evolution of installing Java and the tools on different platforms. And recently I just discovered GBang, which is even a more greater tool, which allows you to run single file Java applications with dependencies without the need to install Maven or Gradle. So I think we have gone through some evolutions there, but it was indeed a bit of a challenge. I agree. But I think we're making progress, and also with some of the JEPs, but we'll probably come to that later.
Yeah, and I also personally think Java can be a good language for beginners, especially. I mean, it may not be the fanciest language, or may not have the most fancy language features, but in my opinion, the greatest strength of Java is its ecosystem and the availability of help and other resources. Because it has been around, for a long time. It's a very stable ecosystem of libraries and stuff. We don't have, like these framework fatigue as in JavaScript or something, right? So, I mean, Spring, for example, has been around for quite some time, right? We are not seeing something replacing it every other year. So there is like a constant, evolution or addition of resources, help, and all those things. So for a beginner, I think Java is one of those language where when they get stuck, they can definitely find answers quite fast. They don't have to spend too much time trying to find solution. They will definitely find something because somebody would have figured out that. So and I agree to the point that Matt and you all mentioned about the environment, and I think for Matt's point about not like the OS having this, I think the only OS I have seen Java coming pre-installed is some Linux distributions, maybe Manjaro and Fedora. But even then, that's the default Oracle version, and then if you want to change from that, it's But I think SDKman has been a great help in that aspect. I think that should kind of become the official Java, management system. Like like other languages comes with these within the language, right? Like Rust has Cargo, which manages everything. Rust up to manage versions and stuff, and we have the Ruby version managers and these kind of things. So I think SDK management man should be taught along with Java as the starting point, in my opinion. So yeah, along with Java, do you think there are other languages that should be taught alongside Java to beginners?
If you look closely at the whole programming scene, you can specify different approaches: object-oriented, functional, imperative. I'm not sure how they say that in English. And last year's GVM environment is evolving. You have all those flavors inside JVM. So actually, I guess to make Java especially more attractive to the people, it's really nice to show them that it's not only Java. You can run all those possibilities inside one system, one platform, and use them with each other, interact with each other, and use the specific language there where it's needed. And that's the nicest thing of Java of the last years, I think.
If I can add SQL, I think that's a nice one to learn. I have seen a whole discussion the last days about Hibernate and that Spring GPA is hiding a lot of complexity for developers who want to work with databases. But databases are pretty important, and I think SQL is... I'm from the age that I really needed to learn SQL. Yes, I'm that old.
We still teach it.
Because I think that's an important one. How do you get the right data out of a database without overloading your Java application with too many objects? I think that's a nice one. And then, the web language. Is HTML a language? CSS?
They can be a language.
I'm going to be controversial here and say HTML and CSS are the easiest ones to learn for a new beginner.
Yeah.
And that's what I learned. And you can be, say they aren't languages, but they worked for me. So
you can build a lot of stuff with it. So yes, it's a language if you look at it from that.
They together are Turing complete, right? Like with HTML and CSS together, you can pretty much do everything these days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I also kind of have the same opinion as Matt that when you're learning a backend language, it kind of helps because most of the use cases are like web related. So I think it makes sense to also learn something for the front end, like JavaScript and HTML and CSS. I think, and that's kind of a very common combination as well, right? And of course SQL also. But yeah, kind of Spring kind of made it a little bit unnecessary to kind of learn like full-fledged SQL, because it kind of abstracts away everything, and you can pretty much do everything with Spring data, right? You don't even have to touch Hibernate or SQL. I can't remember the last time I actually wrote any SQL like by hand. Probably like maybe when I started out my career, probably. But once I started doing Spring, yeah, I don't remember writing SQL by hand. Yeah, maybe like an odd. To do a report, maybe even then you just add an annotation and do the JPA equivalent. But yeah.
But I think another way to look at it, because I do think there's other languages besides just HTML and CSS, but I bought books for my family. I bought one for my wife, I bought one for my son, and one for my daughter, like the languages that I thought they should learn. And one was HTML, CSS, the other one was Python, and the other one was Java. But I do think JavaScript like belongs in the same sort of camp. Like if people come to me and they're like, I want to be a programmer, right? Then I will typically recommend like, I love Java. It's probably going to pay the best, but JavaScript and Python, I think, are good entry languages. And then HTML, CSS, if you just like visual, right? Because I've been a front end developer most of my career, and the front end developers always get the kudos, right? The back end developers never get praised on how good their stuff is.
Yeah.
They get blamed if it's something don't work.
It's stuck, yes.
Right.
Matt, you make me curious. Which book did you buy for your wife?
Oh, I think I got my daughter Python, the son Java, so she got the HTML, CSS one.
I'm curious now. What was the first language you all learned? Like,
In my case, it was BASIC.
Oh.
I'm from the Commodore 64 age. So 10 is print something and 20 is go to 10. And you're stuck with the result.
Okay. I think we shouldn't count BASIC. I think everyone would have got a little bit of BASIC somewhere. But what else other than BASIC?
For me, it was ActionScript and C# at the same time, I think.
So my basic experience was in the backwoods running off a generator on a Commodore 64. So I think that's kind of relevant, right? It was my dad being like, come on, you should be a programmer, right? So this is like, 5 years old or whatever. And I never did anything with it, right? Pascal was the first one I ever took a class on, and that was in 8th or 9th grade, right before high school. And I never did anything with that. So like when I actually did something with a language, that was like HTML and CSS and JavaScript, right? Like building my own website. And then I started getting paid for that when I went into the real world. But my first job that I got paid for was a Y2K consultant. And so I did a lot of SQL because I was building an Access database to record all the inventory of all the software that they had at Storage Tech was the name of the company.
My first language was actually as well Basic, Visual Studio Basic, the one you had to install on 12 CDs and then your computer was just full. Unfortunately, I've never had experienced Commodore. By the way, it's still downstairs here, but it doesn't work anymore. And later on in high school, we made some websites, HTML, CSS, and later on it was Java.
Oh, nice.
Java is a little bit my mother language.
Nice. Yeah, I think I also started with JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. That was the first, probably JavaScript first, and then I realized, okay, I also need HTML and CSS to get stuff done. So yeah, then followed by probably C++ and Java. Yeah, and Doctor Scheme. Actually, Doctor Scheme is the one where I actually learned programming. Before that, I just learned bits and pieces to get the job done whenever I needed. But when I actually learned to program, and when I realized that I actually like programming, was Doctor Scheme. But then, I learned that. Then I realized, okay, nobody actually uses it. But it was fun. It was fun to learn using that. You could learn a lot and apply it in other languages. So that was nice. Okay, let's get into some of the controversial things, when it comes to Java for beginners and stuff, right? So okay, I don't know if you all will agree to this, but I think Java has a boilerplate issue, right? As a modern language or as an evolved language, which is quite modern now, right? It has a boilerplate issue compared to other mainstream languages. You have to write a lot of boilerplate, and I would love not, I would love to, be in I mean, for Java to be in a place where you actually don't have to write, two-string hash codes, getters and setters unless you need it. I mean, of course, it's nice to have those options when you want to override it, but by default, you shouldn't have to do it, right? There should be, primitive, inherited methods or whatever. Like, however, they should be there. The default version should be there, so you can just get going, write your actual code for your logic or whatever, and don't have to worry about adding all these things around, like this boilerplate and the ceremonies around, right? So I would love to see that, and I don't know what your opinion is on that, but my question is, how do we tackle this boilerplate issue, right? Because it's one of the first complaint you hear from people who are kind of against Java, or people who criticize Java. This is the first thing you will hear, right? Boilerplate, verbosity, right? So how do we tackle that, and how do we and do you think the language will keep evolving to reach that place where we don't have to do all this ceremony?
I think the language will evolve that far, but that's really a question which we are asking at the university. Where do we start to learn? Because you have two approaches. The first one is you learn it the high level way. You can use everything, and it's like we say, auto magic. It happens, and you don't know how. It's magic. So you are programming fast. You can make things fast, but when something is broken or you want something out really special or really complex or really efficient, if you don't know how it's built, you can't. So if you have to change that two-string method and you don't know it even exists, that's the problem. The other approach is start learning from the basics, really hard-coded. You have strings, you have chars, you have hash codes. That's the linked list. That's how you make it. And then you make it step by step easier and easier and going to higher level. The bad things about that is that we only have a few years and a few hours to get the students there. So actually, or they don't pay attention enough to get there, or they are just hijacked by other languages and companies, so they don't get. So if one of you have opinion on which approach is the best, I'm really curious.
A few months ago, I was at a high school here in Belgium talking about what has evolved in Java. And I had a group of 30 students and about 8 teachers. And the teachers came to me, we didn't know that Java had changed so much. They were, and I think that's a bit the same idea. They stick to a certain version of Java. I think it was even because they want to focus on the basics. How do you do object-oriented programming? But the whole evolution in the switch cases, for instance, that we have in Java, they heard about it, but they don't use it in their courses, so they ignored it. The whole thing with the records that came to Java, which removed a lot of the two-string and equals stuff. I have some library I'm working on, a pet project, a personal thing, where I only use records, and it's amazing. With the minimal amount of code you need to have a lot of objects that you can combine. I love it. I love the records. And then I made a video and a blog post also for Foojay some time ago about JEP 445, where you have the whole simplified main, which is now yet still a preview in Java 21. And it will also be a preview, I think, in Java 22. So it's not there yet. But I think that's one of those evolutions in Java that will make it easier. You don't need to understand and explain the whole private, static, final, main, string, args stuff. But still, there are also opponents to that approach because you don't need to explain it. So it's both an advantage and a disadvantage. So I think, to get more people into Java, all this new stuff like records and the simplified main are improvements. But we must not forget that at some point people need to take a step forward and do learn what's hidden there.
So I actually think there's been a boilerplate problem with Java since I started with it in the late 90s. And you might notice that I've been trying to solve it the whole time with frameworks like AppFuse and JHipster, right? That generate that boilerplate for you. So yes, like it's bothered me, right? And frameworks kind of help with that. But then you'll see through like the JHipster efforts, like we're taking it even a step further where we generate the whole app for you. So the one thing I do like with the framework space is a lot of start.spring.io, like launch.micronaut.io, and Quarkus has code.quarkus.io. Those all give people a better place to start because they create the dependencies they need in just the basic shell of a project, right? Instead of starting from scratch. And what I've seen with Oracle is even on their dev.java site, I've noticed that a lot of the articles that they will host on there, if they're from third parties, they don't allow frameworks to be discussed. And so in that sense, it's kind of like Oracle's very good at promoting Java and trying to get people to use Java. But when it comes to frameworks, they're like, don't use those. And like frameworks are my love and joy, right? Like if there weren't frameworks in Java, then I wouldn't be here. And so I think, yes, we have a boilerplate problem, but there's also things like records, right? Records come into play and they're awesome. And you can't use them with JPA. And you're like, what? Like, that's why I want records is to use with a JPA project. And to be fair, like you might say, well, what about Kotlin? It has data. The data class is not supposed to be used with JPA either. There's plenty of articles that explain why both of them are bad. And it's like, for me, that's like, well, the frameworks are holding us back now, right? Like the language has evolved, but why can't we use these new features? So it's kind of a, yin and yang.
I actually, want to come back to the point that Elvira mentioned. I actually never thought about the learning aspect about the boilerplate, right? Because because I don't have a computer science background, right? Like I learned whatever I needed from here and here, like Frankenstein, and after a few years they all came together and okay, I know the language, right? So that never occurred to me that when you're actually learning, it's actually useful to learn. Okay, why do you have these, right? Why do you have a hash code method? Why do you have an equals? Why do you have the toString and all these things? And how do they go in the hierarchy and all those things, right? So yeah, that's a very interesting point of this boilerplate. And of course, like still, I think still we shouldn't have that, because of course there are many other languages where you can do everything without needing all this, right? And also all this made sense in an object-oriented world, and I don't think we are in at least currently we are not in a object-oriented kind of a setup. It's either hybrid, I don't remember seeing any project which is like pure object-oriented. There is always some functional programming, some imperative programming there. So yeah, I think to evolve with the trends, or to evolve with the whole industry, I think we should think about how to teach those concepts, but we should also see how we can make it easier, because once you have learned it, those are still going to annoy you, right? When you start producing code, those are still going to annoy you. So we also have to think about, okay, how to teach the concepts, but also how to simplify the language. And I like the approach of unnamed classes and all those things, but I think getting rid of these would have been a much more value than getting rid of the static void main, because you don't write that a lot. You write these a lot. So yeah.
Well, actually, you all bring me to ideas to just switch the learning curve. Instead of starting from the basics and going up to the modern, start from the modern language and add kind of advanced class the history of Java and tell there everything about how it started and why.
We recently there was someone recently asked me. This was I think Mohammed was doing this. Was going around interviewing people and asking which version of Java should a beginner start with. And I was like, 21, the latest. Start with the latest. Like forget about all the old stuff. Start with the latest, and if you ever have to do something, then learn those, right? So because at least it'll be, they'll have more features to get excited about. They won't feel they won't feel left out if they are coming from another language, or if they are looking at other languages, they won't feel that left out. So yeah.
That's why I think that Java gets a bad name in the industry, is because everyone's using Java 7 or Java 8, right? Like
Yeah.
most people, like most Java jobs are working on a legacy system that your job kind of stinks, right? Like it's no fun because you're just fixing bugs. You're never writing new code. And so I think, there's there's this
Yeah.
problem in the Java ecosystem where a lot of people are not using the latest stuff because they can't.
True. I mean, it's true even for the J hipster, right? Like even though we support all the new versions, we never could actually rewrite the code. Let's say to use a switch or deconstruction or whatever, right? We could not, because we are still afraid that okay, someone might want to use it with the previous version, and then we won't be compatible, right? So I think that baggage, that baggage is definitely holding a Java back.
But I appreciate the frameworks that have said Java 17 is our minimum version, right? So that has helped, I think, a lot lift the ecosystem where people are trying to migrate to new ones.
Mhm.
And especially when someone like Pivotal, now Broadcom, right, says, actually, we're not going to support Spring 2.x after this date. And if you want to do it, you're on your own.
To continue with the same discussion, right? So I would love to hear what each of you have or ideas you have to make Java more attractive to beginners and students. What could we do to make it more attractive?
What I'm trying to do is creating some videos and blog posts with Gbang.
Mhm.
So, as Matt said, getting your stuff set up the first time, and you need to install Maven and then build it, and Gbang helps you a lot there. And I created some examples with my stuff here behind me, with my Raspberry Pis and LED strips and stuff like that. That you just have one file, and everything is in that one file to define your dependencies, and then just run the application and have something on a LED strip, some blinking LEDs, stuff like that. So fancy things which you can do with one single file. Actually, a bit what you can do with Python, but I never loved Python. I always ended up with problems with pip install, and then suddenly it was pip3 install, and things were broken. So having issues with your system setup to program, that happened to me also with Python. So I don't think it's only Java which has a problem there.
True.
I think Gbang, for instance, and having a lot of content available between Christmas and New Year. I had a live video with Almas Baim, who created FXGL, the game engine in JavaFX. And we also created the Gbang example. So now you have a game which is only one single file, and you have a shooter game. So I think if we can make more of these and show that Java, which was born as a language for set-top boxes and user interface design, is now considered to be a backend thing, but you can do a lot more than that. And I think if we can show that more to the world, then we can also convince more people to try it out and see what they actually can do with Java.
So I don't really know that we have a problem getting new people to like Java, because as a consultant before I joined Okta, I was always trying to get people to use simpler frameworks like Grails, or even while I've been at Okta, trying to educate people on Kotlin as an easier alternative to Java. And what I've found for the most part is the people that are transferring from some other language, back in my consulting career around 2010, it was Cold Fusion. They didn't want to learn Groovy because guess what? There's not a lot of Groovy jobs. They wanted to learn Java so they could up level their skills and go get a better job. So maybe if Java speakers just started telling people how much they made, then people would be like, oh yeah, I want to do Java, because That's what I found is a lot of people want to do Java because it pays really well. And a lot of the alternatives that the Java ecosystem has in Kotlin and stuff, that only really appeals to Java developers. It doesn't appeal to the other people that just want to get a good job in the ecosystem. Now, when it comes to students, I think the problem there is the teachers. No offense to you, like I know
You're
this is
right.
a US thing and I don't think it applies to other parts of the world, but in the US they're teaching C and C++. Both my kids have taken computer science classes at their university and they haven't been able to ask me any questions because I don't know anything about those languages, right? I can't help them. And so they're kind of stuck with, actually struggling through figuring out how to use them. And so I think in the universities there could be just Java, right, as an intro language, and that would help it tremendously. And there is something I wanted to make you aware of in case you weren't, that there's a project called, what is it? It's a project to enhance undergraduate computer science curricula in the US. And it's basically trying to initiate a long-term partnership between the computer science industry and software industry and academia, right? And I think it's very important because like there should be professors that are up to date on the technologies and teaching those, not teaching them something that they can't use when they get out into the real world, right?
Couldn't agree more. Most of the time, now I wouldn't say problem, not to offend my colleagues, but most of the time we are teaching students things we know. And how longer you're working as a teacher, how more is the danger of not being updated on the new things. So yeah, that is really a danger. Right now we are offering actually different languages. We start with C. By the way, we are not only programming bachelor. We are technical programming. So we are making robots and some races between some cars to finish first and avoid obstacles and things like that. A little bit playing around. But we start with C. Then our second language, on which we spend a little bit more time, is Java. In second year, they are getting C++, and a little bit of, don't be scared, Haskell.
Mhm.
And in the meantime, they can apply for the extracurricular courses of Python, because it's actually everywhere Python.
And I would like to add to that, right? Like Matt said, he doesn't know of a problem, right? So this comes from the fact that there are other options for people right now, like at least maybe not for students, or even for students, right? Like I'm a strong advocate of sunsetting C and C++ and just using Rust. The industry will be way better off. We'll have especially I think people like us in the cybersecurity industry will be way better off, less issues to worry about. Just they're good to learn. They're good to learn basics. Just forget them. Move on to Rust and forget that they were. Anyway, but there is also Go, which is a very viable option for anyone doing Java, right? So similarly, there are many other newer programming like Julia and all these things, then 100 other newer languages, right? Which kind of solves a lot of issues that we have with other languages. Then we have, of course, the elephant in the room, Python. I want to come to Python in the next question, so let's park it for there. But yeah, that's why I think that there are other options, right? And when there are other options, and when we have some negative press or this sentiment around something, it doesn't help. That's why. So what can we do to make it more attractive, and how can we reduce that negative sentiment?
I guess adding people like Frank and the projects and then podcasts he's doing, and show them really to the students or people who are starting with the language, that's a big advantage, a big addiction to make the language popular.
And maybe we should invite the teachers to the jugs and stuff like that, because
Yeah,
new evolutions are shown, and you get demos of what is possible with the Java of these days and not the Java.
Yeah. Well, actually, in a few months, I'm organizing a few days course for my colleagues on Java, given by we are still in doubt about two companies to learn teachers the newest Java from pre-age Java 8 until the modern Java 21 and some preview features of Java 21. So yeah, work in progress.
Nice, nice.
Frank, you brought up jugs, and I think that's an excellent point. Not just getting the teachers to join the jugs, but actually going to the teachers. I would like to see a lot more jugs started on campuses by the students or the teacher or whatever, because that's where students are going to show up for, right? I went to school here in Denver, and we host our Denver Jug meetings downtown. And for me, that might have well has been in another country when I was a college student, right? It was so far away. And so if I just had to walk across campus to a meeting, chances are I would have done it a lot more.
Okay, the elephant in the room, Python. So, yeah, like it or not, we are in the post machine learning AI world, right? Like, so it's not going to slow down or anything. It's just going to, expand until it eats up everything else, probably. And Python is at the forefront, right? Of that. So I'm not a fan of Python. I don't like the semantics of the language. Actually, I don't have anything against the concept, but it just like doesn't trigger any happiness if I write Python code. But yeah, and Java unfortunately is quite behind, right? We don't have anything to offer in much. We don't have much to offer in that space, especially the AI space. Of course, we can offer a lot in the ML space in terms of data processing. Hadoop and all those things. It's there, right? So we Java has offered a lot in the machine learning part of it, but in the AI, Gen AI, or AGI, whatever, that space we don't have a lot to offer, right? And I would blame 90% of that to the JNI and all those the fiascos around there. And I'm hoping Project Panama will address some of it, but still, we have to agree that Java doesn't have a big presence there, right? So, what is your opinion on that? And where do you see Java in a post ML AGI world?
You have been to the latest JFL, right?
Yeah.
There was a lecture or a talk about machine learning with Lego bricks.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the biggest example because Python is famous inside machine learning, but I also don't like Python. By the time I learned Python, it was between Python 2 and Python 3. It felt like it's a language with identity crisis. You're not sure the things which are forbidden in 2 are must be used in Python 3 at stages. So actually, I tried to use Java in the early stages for machine learning, and it was really hard. And right now, it's still becoming better. The language is evolving. And I think that people don't know it can. But actually, Java can be used for machine learning. And right now, in April, we are starting with the course machine learning to learn system to drive a simulated car with torques.
Mm-hmm.
And I am planning to do it in Java and to motivate as most people as I could to do it in Java instead of Python.
Nice.
Matt, you're wearing a T-shirt of Devox, the 20-year Devox, so he was at Devox. I've seen there a talk about LangChain Foojay, which is okay. We have to admit it is a LangChain which was made in Python, which was then remade in Java.
Yeah.
But whoa, I'm doing a talk at FOSDEM in a month about searching through the docs that I write for Azul with a ChatGPT-like interface. So I'm feeding that little JavaFX application with my real docs, so it is not linked to some trained model of 2 years ago. And wow, again, it's Java, what you can do with so little code, because there is a powerful library created by amazing people for free. Again, and you can just add a dependency to your project, and you have this whole thing that's available in OpenAI. And okay, you need a key, and you have to put at least $1 in that account of OpenAI to have some kind of thing that you can call there. But yeah, Python has grown a lot thanks to machine learning, AI, but it's also inspired a lot of Java people to do similar things. And I'm only mentioning LangChain Foojay. There's a whole list of libraries, projects. Then we have evolutions in Java, and indeed JNA and stuff like that. So the vector API is also, I think,
Yeah. Yeah.
improve that. So if someone asks you again which Java version should people learn, it probably will be 23, which is not there yet. That will be the starting point, because a lot of these things will be there.
Cool.
But hopefully,
Yeah.
we cannot predict that. We have to wait.
Yeah, Vector API has been like fourth incubator. I thought like after three it will be stabilized, but it's like a fourth incubator. Okay, so yeah.
I think we have things which are in the 6th preview version. It sometimes takes some time before Java evolves, but if it arrives, then you can be very sure that it's good stuff that you're getting. And same with the library. So yes, we are behind with machine learning, definitely, but there's a lot of things going on there.
I think it's somewhat the nature of the language, where I've heard it from the people that work on it at Oracle, that they want to be the late followers, right, of the trendiest things in languages so they can get it right. And so I think, from that perspective, yeah, Python might be ahead on the AI stuff, but I think we'll catch up, right? And from a new beginner perspective, like, I don't hate Python. In fact, you heard that I gave books to my family and there was a Python one in there, right? But career-wise, the funny thing is, as a consultant for 20 years before I joined Okta, I never saw Python, and I never saw it as a threat, and I never encountered it at any companies, right? There might have been sysadmins that knew it and might have automated some stuff with it, but it was never really even on my radar until I worked with other developer advocates that loved it and promoted it. Randall was on our team at Okta, and then at Auth0 we have Jess Temporal, and both of them are such huge enthusiasts of the language that it's a little catchy, right? Like, I'm a little bit of an enthusiast just because of them. But I haven't written any Python code. So I think from a beginner perspective, it's people like that that will make beginners attracted to it, not the language itself. It's just people that are gung-ho about it. So same thing with Java. If we have more Java champions or advocates that are just like, this language is great, without being a framework fanatic like I am, then chances are it won't be as much of a threat.
Yeah, and I'm definitely excited for when all the Panama stuff lands like properly, and then actually you can start doing Java on GPU, because currently we cannot do Java on GPU unless you want to kill yourself by trying to do it with JNI. So yeah, I'm definitely hopeful that once we have the Vector API and we have Project Panama stabilized, I think we will catch up with all the GPU stuff and all the CUDA stuff and everything. So for someone starting out and trying to learn Java, what advice would you give them?
Use IntelliJ.
Agree,
Use IntelliJ.
100%.
And it's funny because when I started, right, creating my AppFuse project, it was all AMP based. And I had a very strong stance at that point that do not use an IDE. But I was also a guy who used HomeSite, which is like an HTML editor, right? I would look up the imports and copy and paste them. And they've gotten so much better, right, in the last 20 years that I almost laugh at people who don't use an IDE now, right? And so I think, the IDE is going to help you greatly. I think, maybe if you're going to use a framework, start with something that's been out there a while, right? Like Spring Boot has so much documentation and so many tutorials, and they're so good at backwards compatibility that it's pretty easy to pick up for a beginner, versus some framework that came out last year or last month. Like, it's going to be tough to get started with that. So, use your IDE and, use a framework. But again, if you really want to learn the language, then using a framework might not help you do that.
For a beginner, I guess a good advice is watch out which resources you're using when you are Googling stuff. Because just Google things and, oh, it works. And then just implementing it and it appears to be the wrong code or just a Python 2 code, then you're wrong because you're not programming, you're, like we say, not programmeren, but Googlemeren. Googling and programming, and you're not learning anything, or actually you're learning the wrong stuff. So choose your resources.
I feel attacked. I even have macros for copy.
Sorry.
No, I'm kidding.
Raise your hand if you are a full Stack Overflow developer.
Stack Overflow, yeah.
Can I continue with the IDE? If you're at a new company as a new job and they're not willing to pay immediately for an IntelliJ license, that's a really big red flag. You can gain so much efficiency if you're using the right tools. It's not only IntelliJ, it's all the right tools. If a company is not willing to give you the right tools for a new job, that's a red flag. You should ask that before joining. Getting started with Java. How can actually we have a tutorial on Foojay, a quick start tutorial. Gives you 10 lessons, a half an hour for really the basics. And then learn from other people. Learn how others are doing something. There are amazing tutorials online. A lot of them for free on YouTube, on wherever. On Foojay, of course. But I have to admit, on Foojay, we may be focusing a lot on very experienced developers and diving deep into certain topics. So we don't have that much content. And maybe, you're right, Elvira, maybe we need to create more of these, create more simple examples. How do you do stuff with a few classes and not a full project? That's maybe something we as Java community could help.
But developers themselves, like the best way to learn is build something, right? Like doing tutorials only gets you so far and it's not really going to stick. You're just going to be like, wow, that worked. And now I can clone the Git repo and my code matches, right? But building something that you want to use in your life, that'll make you learn and it'll stick and it'll be great.
For the advice, I want to add something as a polyglot developer, right? This is what helped me learning multiple languages. So for Java specifically, I still recommend people to start with the latest version. And what I know, so what I see working, especially if you're coming from another language, or even if you want to go to another language after Java, right? So learning the basics of these will be the basics of any language, like learn about the type systems, learn about operators, learn about functions, control flow, generics, pattern matching, these kind of things first before you start learning the language specific things, and then go with the say Java specific things of inheritance, polymorphism, or all that things, and then go with functional programming or OOP or I mean, of course, you will know imperative programming by now. But then, of course, I think it helps to learn both, not just one. I think both are quite valuable, and I'm a strong believer that don't go with just one. Use both. Like don't just do functional programming. If you want to tune your program to be as fast as possible, you will end up writing imperative code. So learn all the methodologies and use what works for that particular situation. So use the right tool for the job. So, and as Matt mentioned, I don't know if Matt mentioned that, but don't start with the framework, but do the language first, learn the language first, and then of course learn some frameworks, at least some basic frameworks, because I don't think you will be writing code in pure Java in real world cases. You will be using frameworks. You'll be using, if you're writing a web app, you probably will be using like Spring, Micronaut or something. You're not going to write pure Java code, right? So the final question I have, what languages do you think have best job opportunities these days from what you have seen?
Last year, I've seen more and more students getting away with Python. because machine learning is getting big, and actually every small company wants to do something with machine learning. So I guess the short term, short projects is Python, but I know a lot of big companies who are doing some of GVM languages. So I guess it's more the question: what are your interests? Are you more interested in data or in backend or in front end or in security?
So, what kind of job do you want? Is
Yeah.
my question. Because if you want to be a consultant and you actually want like latest and greatest kind of languages and frameworks, right? So, I would say in the enterprise space, it's probably Java and Go. At Auth0, we have a lot of our infrastructure written in Go, but a lot of it's also in Node. So Java, Go, and JavaScript, probably not Rust. Sorry, Deepu.
Yeah,
But
I know.
but like as a consultant, but a lot of people don't like consulting because they're like, I might have, an issue where I need healthcare and I need benefits and I live in this place called the US where I don't get that just by living, right? And so I want to go work at a company for a long time and have those good benefits. In that case, it's what does the company have, right? If you want to go work for Google, then chances are, you could learn Angular, right? And TypeScript, and you don't even need to know any backend languages or stuff like that. Or Go, I think they have a lot of stuff in Go, and I know they have a ton of projects in Java, right? And at Okta, we have two main clouds, our Workforce Cloud and our Customer Identity Cloud. The Workforce Cloud is all Java, all Spring Boot. The Identity Cloud's all JavaScript and like Hoppy and Node. So it kind of like it depends on where you want to work and what you want to do.
Mhm. And maybe also the type of company. If you go to the
Yeah.
old established companies, then chances are you are getting with an old language, meaning a language which already exists a long time, like Java, C# maybe. And then, the startups, they are typically somewhere in that TypeScript, JavaScript, Node environment, or some other fancy thing that the founder probably knew when he was developing the project all by his own. So, it depends also a bit on the company. But I think if you have a good understanding of a language, you can pretty easily switch. I made a switch from ActionScript to C# to Java, which are different but still the same somehow. So being a good developer is understanding how you structure your code, how you can talk to the clients, internal or external, understanding what the problem is, how you can solve a problem. So being a good programmer is not only knowing a good language. Actually, I had someone who said, "Yeah, I chose programming because I didn't want to speak to people." And then I found out that I need to speak a lot to people to understand what they really want to be fixed. So being a programmer is much more than just typing code. So which language? Of course, it's Java, if you ask me, but probably there are a lot of others which will give you a nice job and hopefully a big bag of money, as as Pat was saying before. But
I think the best money is with the mainframe and COBOL.
if you still can
Stability.
afford that.
Huh?
Stability. We have a lot of stability with COBOL and mainframes for sure.
And it pays a lot. The first company I worked with, we had mainframe developers, and for the same level, they used to get twice the pay for the same level, just because they knew mainframe. So yeah.
But I would say to keep yourself as like an enthusiastic developer, look at open source projects, because even if you can't use your favorite language at your company in your job, chances are there's an open source project out there that either you could start to use your language or that you could join and really help those people out. And that will transcend into your next job. And you won't just be tied into your experience from that job. As someone who's been a new developer before without a computer science background, I got degrees in Russian international business and finance. And when I decided my senior year to switch to being a programmer, like, it was kind of difficult getting in. And what really, helped me in my career was conferences and open source,
Yeah.
right? So doing a lot of open source really helped me learn And especially because I did it wrong a lot, and people would be like, "Your two string sucks," right? Or your hash code is wrong for Hibernate stuff. So I kind of learned through community feedback. But then I made friends who seem like old college friends from going to conferences and speaking at conferences and just networking with people. And it's still a joy to go to a lot of the Java conferences because people have been doing it for 20 years. And it's tough to get new people in, but I think at the same time, that's what Deepu and I are trying to do with developer advocacy, and Foojay is trying to do it as well, right? Is just, and you're educating people on, how to be programmers. So I think we're all, doing our part, and I think you all have had a good experience like with this career. So I would encourage everyone to, just be a part of the community and go out. And even though it kind of, can be nerve wracking to talk to people, and especially when you have social anxiety, like it's very rewarding.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think open source has, I don't think I would have been in the industry, or I would have learned all multiple languages, or whatever, had a career if it wasn't for open source. So I think open source kind of helped me learn like most of what I learned. So, and the point what Matt said, right? If you like something, and even if you can't do that in your work, you can always do open source. So that's why I write code these days, like, because I want to write Rust code. So I'm doing a lot of open source projects. So.
The Java community is really a warm community, a really welcoming community. Even if you are a newcomer or you're just fresh first year, second year students, it's they all feeling welcome, and they all feeling helped.
Yeah. I don't think any other language has the kind of jet networks that Java has, right? The consistency and the interconnectivity of that, right? I mean, they all have
Right.
user groups, but
Yeah, we have hundreds around the world, and there's part of me that wishes like it was originally started by Sun and invested in by Sun. I wish Oracle would invest a little more, right? But
yeah.
otherwise, there's plenty of companies that are investing, so I think they'll continue to thrive.
Thank you so much, everyone, and especially our amazing guests and all our amazing audience for tuning in. Keep an eye on Foojay for future articles about development and everything related to the Java world. So thank you and adios.
Give me a foo, give me a J, give me the friends of OpenJDK.